Good morning. My name is Ben Bingle, and I'm the director of the DeKalb County Nonprofit Partnership. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar on donor stewardship. We have a lot to cover today, but I wanted to touch on a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, we'll be recording today's webinar, and the recording will be sent to you later by email, along with an evaluation form, so you can provide us with feedback and input about this training. And if you'd like, you can share this recording with others in your organization who may not be attending live right now. We've already had a question in the chat about providing the slides after today's session, and we'll also include that in the email. Please note we have everyone muted, but feel free to use the Q&A and chat features that are built into Zoom. We'll plan to save some time at the end of today's session to address the questions that you submit. And finally, we plan to have about 45 minutes of content and then around 10 to 15 minutes for questions. So again, please submit your questions for discussion. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters today, Kristen Miller and Terry Sparts. Both of them have years of experience as professional fundraisers, and both of them are a lot of fun to work with. So we're very fortunate to have them lead today's session for us. And I want to share a little bit about their backgrounds with you. Kristen has worked in the nonprofit field as a development professional and volunteer for over 20 years, prior to joining the NIU Foundation as the Director of Advancement for the College of Visual and Performing Arts. Kristen was the principal of Clark Miller Consulting and worked exclusively with DeKalb County nonprofit organizations. During her career, Kristen honed her skills as a development officer at the Indianapolis Museum of Art, Museum of Science and Industry, and the Northlight Theater. And Terry has nearly 20 years of nonprofit experience, with over 16 years of that in major gift fundraising in healthcare and higher education. Throughout her years with the NIU Foundation, she learned the importance of building authentic donor relationships and meaningful stewardship experiences. She believes that finding a way to make giving a fun experience for donors will keep them engaged for years to come. Terry is currently the Community Engagement Director at the DeKalb County Community Foundation. Welcome, Kristen and Terry, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
You can take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I know you were really looking forward to another virtual meeting or session, so thanks for taking the time out for this one. We're excited to talk with you today about some good tips and strategies on doubling down on donor stewardship. So let's get started. Some of the things we want to cover today is, just to give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about, is getting on the same page of what stewardship really means. When we talk about donor stewardship and stewardship, those are two completely different meanings. We're going to just clarify that so we're starting from the same page. And why is stewardship important? We all have so much going on, and I know your organizations have pressing issues other than how to steward our donors, and we're all facing a lot right now, so we're going to talk about that. And then who to really spend your very precious time on. How do you focus in on those who are really going to help you change your organization? And how and where do you steward donors? And so we have some fun ideas and some different things to maybe spur some creativity on how you go about stewarding your donors. And then when do you steward a donor? And so I know today on this call, we have a lot of different organizations, all different shapes and sizes. We have all volunteer staff, we have paid staff, we have paid fundraising staff. And we want to make this usable and a good tool for any organization, any shape and size. So hopefully you'll be able to take away some keys today.
Thanks, Terry. Next, we want to just give you a few big questions to focus on today. So we are going to hopefully, by the end of this dynamic presentation, have answered these questions. What can a nonprofit do to create a strong stewardship program in the midst of a global pandemic? I know I'm probably not the only one that sometimes feels like Henny Penny these days. Remember that story with the sky falling? So we want to give you some good, strong follow-up points on stewardship. Number two, why is stewardship critical to the success of a nonprofit program? And then three, how can a nonprofit ensure it continue to focus on stewardship? So those are the big three for today that we will hopefully have answered for all of you by the end of our time together.
So what is stewardship? Like I mentioned, we want to speak the same language as we move forward. And so if you go to good old Merriam-Webster, the definition of stewardship is much different than what we're talking about today. So the traditional stewardship is the office, duties, and obligations of a steward, conducting, supervising, managing something. So in this definition, you could use it as, she believes that stewardship of the environment is everyone's responsibility, or being good steward to your church or to your organization. Very important and necessary, but not exactly what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about donor stewardship, and it's all about the donor. So I think donor stewardship is a meaningful, keyword there, meaningful approach to recognize, thank, and convey impact to donors in a way to encourage continued giving. I know that's a lot of words, big sentence, but it's very intentional. And I think that's the way we need to think about stewardship, as being intentional, strategic, and meaningful to our donors. So rather than your traditional definition of stewardship, we're really focusing on this part today. So as one of the greats, Homer Simpson, ponders the questions of life, but why does stewardship matter? We know it's important. We know we should be doing it, or there's always room to improve, but why does it matter? And so what I want to talk about with you is the donor cultivation cycle, because stewardship's a very important component to that, but I also want to show you the advantage of why you should do it. So we're going to start here with identifying your prospective donor. So you might have a pool of maybe community members or people that you think have capacity to give. So this is the part where you kind of make your list, right? And you do whatever research you can to identify maybe some people you'd like to talk to and probably have never given to your organization before, but they have capacity. And then you want to qualify them. In this case, it doesn't have to be like asset-based and confirming that they have, well, we can see through research that they have a capacity to give this kind of gift. In qualification, in this instance, I want to really talk about somebody that they qualify with an interest to your organization. Maybe they've never given, but if you share your story or your mission with this person, are they engaged? Do they want to learn more? Are they like, that's great, see you later, keep on doing what you're doing, it's important, but that's not my jam, kind of thing. So in this instance, I think qualification is really, does somebody show interest in your organization and through your mission? Once they're qualified and they're like, yes, I'd love to learn more, then you start cultivating that donor. And that's when you really get to know them in an authentic way, not just what's always easy, but you really start to learn what makes them tick, learn maybe about their family, and every donor's comfort level is different in what they will share with you. So they might just want to strictly keep it about your organization, but really find out about what in your organization they're attracted to and talk more about that, build on that, and why are they interested in that part of your organization or you as a whole at all, and then build off of that. So really get to know them, and it can take time. This can take anywhere, depending on the size of the gift, it could take anywhere from 12 months to 36 months, which is a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it's worth it. And then sometimes it could take a matter of weeks or months. So it really depends on the donor. And then next is solicitation, asking for the gift. When you ask for a gift, it's kind of uncomfortable, right? Like, if you haven't done it before, you might be scared to death. It's not that scary, and no is okay. I just want to preface this, that no is okay. It doesn't mean no to you. It means no now, no to you, no to the specific ask. But when we talk about asking, I do ask that you think and be intentional about your ask and be specific. Whether it's a dollar amount, that's great, that's helpful, but being specific about the impact that that gift is going to have. So it might be your gift of $100 is going to provide X, Y, and Z to our organization, or it's going to impact this many people. Be as specific as possible. And also where you guide your donor in an ask is, if you really need operating funds right now, which many of us do, right? Say, you know what, your gift of $500 or $1,000, name your range and what's appropriate for your organization, but that would really help us with this. And this is where the most need is now. People want to know how they're going to make an impact. So be specific about that. And
Right.
that's where we finally get
a lot more about engagement and segmentation as we move forward today, but that's super important.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about all of these things, and then stewardship is really communicate the impact and thank the person for the gift, which obviously we'll talk more on next.
Right. So before we jump into the segmented conversation, we have a question for all of you. And let me qualify this a little bit. So one of the things that is super important, if you are a small organization or you're a larger organization, you need to be tracking your donor data. So if you're a small organization, $50,000 to $100,000 operating budget, all volunteer, track your donor data through a Excel spreadsheet. But I know there's larger organizations on this call that have software capability through a database. So bottom line is, you, in order to be good stewards of your donor dollars, you want to retain your donors. And so understanding what your donor retention rate is really important. So we're gonna give you some more info about that. But first we have a quick poll. These polls are really cool. Thanks, Mark, for your help here.
I know, I haven't really seen them much on the back end. It's fascinating.
Super cool. All right. Getting in here. All right. 75%. This is super cool. All right, we'll give it another few seconds here. All right. Wow. 50-50. Okay. So some of you know and some of you don't know, and that's okay. All right. We'll move on here. Thank you, Mark. So I want to share with you some donor retention facts, and then don't worry if you don't know your retention rate. Here in a couple slides, we're going to give you the simple math formula so you can figure that out. But what's important for donor retention is to remember that it costs less to retain a donor than it does to acquire a donor. So always keep that in the forefront of your mind. The return on investment for a major gift is more than that of an annual gift. So you're going to spend about 20 cents per dollar raised to get that major gift into your organization. So these are some things that put them in your parking lot if you're not doing them right now, and just know that you need to revisit them as you grow your understanding of your donor base. And then also remember that your annual appeal or your direct mail benchmark, so I'm talking like paper appeals, it costs about $1.25 for every dollar raised to acquire a donor. What is fascinating to me through the success of Give DeKalb County this last year, if your organization participated, but the acquisition expenditure to acquire a new donor was like, Ben, I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it was like cents and I'm talking like 12 cents or something like that, right? So that just shows you that digital engagement, especially in the era of COVID-19, is super important. So donor retention facts here that'll carry you forward. We can go to the next one. So the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. I love this project. I am a data geek. I love data. And I would encourage all of you to remember that you should be donor-centered and data-driven when you're thinking about retention. So this is, and we have a link to a good compilation of this information. There's a lot of information in this collective report that has been put out since 2016 between AFP and the Urban Institute. So it takes data from over 10,000 nonprofits. And the biggest takeaway is that the attrition rates for donors is really concerning. And I'll tell you, the new tax laws for not being able to itemize unless your household income is, if you're an individual filing, you have to have $12,000 a year. And if you're a couple, $24,000 a year in order to itemize. There's a lot of professional fundraisers or philanthropic partner, as I like to call myself, because it's not about me, it's about the donor, that really wish that those laws would change. But that's a whole nother session. But what this report tells us is that lapsed new gifts, new donor retention, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, is super important. But the average donor retention rate is around 45%. I know there's at least one nonprofit in our community that when I was consulting had a donor retention rate of 90%. I almost fell off my chair. That's like unheard of. So bottom line is just know it, right? But that's right around 50% is like super gold star. But look at this new donor retention rate. It at one point it was 29% in the last. It's just taken a dive. So we're going to talk about why that's important, to talk to your new donor pool a little bit differently. And here's the simple math. I took math for comm majors in college, so this is about as fancy as it gets for me. I like to joke that I raise the money, I don't track it, but this is your calculation, and you'll get the slide deck as follow-up. All right, Terry, take it away.
All right. So we want to talk a little bit more about who receives stewardship and segmenting our donors and how we communicate to those. So up comes our next poll. And Kristen, feel free to chime in on this, but when we talk about segmenting communication to our donors, we want to explain a little bit more about what we mean to that. A, are you doing it at all? But B, are you segmenting your new donors from your loyal donors? Are you segmenting it by, annual gifts, by major gifts? So there's a lot of different ways you can slice and dice this.
Or how you're talking to them.
Yep.
If you have donors that here's an example. If you're talking to your pool of renewable donors that give to you right before Give to Cal County, reasonable to think that you only talk with them digitally because they're given to you online. They clearly are emailers, right? But maybe there's people that are not online, don't have an email address. They're maybe an older donor, so you need to call them or write to them, right? All right, so little lower results here. So this tells me by the number of people that answered that maybe we don't have people thinking about doing this. So that's good, because hopefully you'll be able to take what we're sharing today and then take it back to your organization. So.
Great. And the polls really are meant to, just give you food for thought of, if you haven't thought of this, or if you're not doing it, it might be something you might want to consider as you move forward. So segmenting donors for retention purposes. Kristen talked about, some of the dollars associated with donor retention of new donors. But here's some of the other effects that it can have. So if you are segmenting and communicating to your new donors, even if it's just a thank you, or you start building them into your communication efforts, whether it's newsletters, a quick phone call, thank you, you're building recognition of your organization with that person. So, let's just say they gave, this is a first time donor, they gave to your organization through Give to Cal County because they'd heard of you and you sounded like legit. Maybe one of their friends was like, I love this organization. So you said, yes, I'm going to give to them this year. When you get that thank you, it really starts establishing your relationship and your connection with that donor on a different level, not just because they heard about you through a friend, but you're now in it. And it creates understanding of the impact that gift had on your organization, and it establishes your first contact, which is super important, especially as you're talking about stewardship or cultivation, gift, and stewardship, is having a reason to reach out to them instead of a cold call or a note or a cold email that may not be ever opened. This gives some familiarity, and you could say, hey, I was calling because of your gift. Thank you so much. We'd love to talk more, and if you want to learn more about our organization or be on our newsletter, you get the point. But it gives you a reason, and that's really important. And then it increases the likelihood of retaining that donor. And then for your loyal donors, it's donor retention, which is very important. So we still want to continue to segment them and steward them differently. Strengthens the connection, and it opens doors to other influential people, easy for me to say, that they may know. They support your organization and have been doing so for years, and it might open the door for some new contacts for you in your organization. And then also, the more you reach out, the more you create and establish what the impact of their gift is. It can also increase the size of their gift and kind of up the ante on their donor, their capability and their capacity, because they know it's really doing something good for you.
Yeah, and I was just going to throw in here too. I mean, I think if you want to focus on segmenting, these are the two that we've highlighted because right now your missions are so incredibly, they're more important than ever, right? And so if you or your boards, I don't know how many of you are board members that are on the call today, but your mission still matters, and don't be afraid to ask, because then you're putting it in the donor's hands and they may say, no, I can't give to you right now, but that doesn't mean that they won't come back, right? So especially this loyal category, make sure you're contacting all of them in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. And no for now doesn't mean no forever. So again, it's okay to get a no every once in a while.
No means hello.
You've probably seen images like this before with the donor pyramid. I put our prospects down here. Annual donors are the largest portion of the pyramid. Major donors are somewhere in the middle that we hope to move up, also to planned and bequests. But this is what I really want you to look at here is the larger the gift, the more personalized the stewardship. So we can all do individual outreach to every annual donor. We can thank them. I would encourage, if you do a form letter, to write a little personal, like, hey, Kristen, thank you so much for supporting our organization. Your gift matters. Happy holidays. That's all you need to do. Maybe get some volunteers to do that, but it really makes a difference. If you can't like handwrite a card thanking people for their gifts. But then when you get up here to your major and planned giving, that's when you really need to hone in and really make sure you know your donors and make sure that you're aligning opportunities for them with their interests. So you're this is where your relationship building and your matchmaking with your organization needs and goals to what their interests are. And you shouldn't make things up to fit their interests. I just want to be clear about that. Don't add extra work. They should know you by now and what you stand for and what you need and how you as an organization need to grow or want to grow and be along on that journey, not creating more work and new initiatives for you. That's not the point of this. So I just want to make sure that's very clear. But so those are just maybe more frequent touches, and we'll talk about timing on some of that as we move forward, and I'll explain a little bit more.
All right, so here we just wanted to give you some context about why donors do stop giving. And actually, as we were reviewing our slides, realized should have made this from the top down, but so I'm gonna start at the bottom. But this is where, a lot of donors can no longer afford to give. I think this is gonna be the impact that we don't know. You don't know if they're gonna stop giving right now until you ask them. And certainly, Give DeKalb County, they didn't stop giving, right? So what happens with your year-end appeals? Get it out and then we'll have to find out and crunch that data, right? But I think this 36% here. So what Terry and I want you to take away from here is that besides losing someone, leaving us forever,
This earth.
60% there. We cannot control that, right? Unfortunately. But all the rest of these things we can't control. So I just can't talk enough about this 36% here. Don't let other organizations ask and you don't, because they're going to come through as being that their mission's more important right now, right? So Terry, anything else you want to throw in on this slide?
Yeah, I do think, as you read through this, it's like, well, yeah, I could fix that. But honestly, other than dying, you can make an impact in each one of these areas. And I think that's a lot of power, and it's a lot of, it can gather a lot of excitement on how you approach your donors. But yeah, don't let anybody tell you that you don't deserve it, or hopefully you're not putting that message out there to your donor base is that, well, we don't really need it or don't deserve it. I don't think anyone would do that, but by lack of asking you intentionally or unintentionally.
Right. And another segment that, again, data geek here, I'll give you an example of, to the point of the 16% there, when I was working at Northlight Theater, we had an aging audience. So the attrition of our donors, because they were leaving us permanently, that was affecting ticket sales and all these other things, and it was affecting donations, right? So there's a whole nother presentation for us to do, Terry, but there's the planned giving opportunity. So keep that one in your parking lot too. All right, how and where do you steward your donors? Now we're getting in the nitty gritty here. This is just a quick representation of, now you have the gift in the door. So what we want to encourage you to think about is that process of that retention, right? So have a stewardship plan. Right away, I know you're all acknowledging your gifts in a quick manner. And especially with this time at home, I can't encourage you enough to pick up the phone and call, or get some volunteers to call, right? That's one of the easiest things that you can do right now. And you might not get them, but you can leave a message and it'll make them smile when they get that message from you.
I will say really quickly, after Give DeKalb County, I gave to an organization I had never given to. And the next day I got a phone call, and I picked up the phone, and they were shocked. And then I was shocked to hear it was that organization thanking me for my small gift. It wasn't $1 zillion, but thanking me for my gift and how it makes a difference. And they retained me after that. It was really powerful. I think she was looking forward to leaving a message, but we had a great conversation instead. So
absolutely. So yeah, this is a slide that you could easily print out and just tack it on your bulletin board to remind you about the stewardship process. Next slide. So here's where we're diving into segmentation of your engagement. And one of the things I really want to stress here is make sure you're asking the donor how you want to communicate with them. I was telling Terry, because we had a great time working together for almost 3 years over at NIU. And I had this prospect that I tried to engage for the longest time. And my handwritten notes to her is what got me over the finish line to be able to have a conversation about her philanthropy. And she point blank told me, I do not Zoom. She's 80. She doesn't want to Zoom. So I'm not inviting her to any of those things, right? As I steward her and solicit her for a bigger gift, right? So make sure you're thinking about, how do those donors want to hear from you? And some of the ways that you can segment your engagement or your communication is email, texting. We were also lamenting about how awesome personal notes are. This box behind me is note cards. So I try to be in the habit. I'm not as good as I would like to be, but when I see a gift come through with a donor that I'm working on, I try to just jot down 2 quick sentences and pop that in the mail. So who doesn't like to get mail? I don't care if you're 2 or 102, it's fun to get mail, right? And then another idea we have in here is to do an impact overview. And this says print. Again, do you have maybe an elderly donor that doesn't have email, then you'd want to send something like that to them. Otherwise, do a PDF and email it out, right? So these are just some examples to get you thinking about segmentation.
And it is nice to know too, as you do get to know your donor, but be intentional about asking how the best way to reach them is, because I had a lot of people that I was calling and just like, oh man, these messages, and they're like, oh, I don't even listen to my voicemail, just text me. Shoot me a quick text and I'll get right back to you. But no, I don't really listen to voicemail. So people are all over the board on this, and don't assume just because they're an older donor, they might not be tech savvy. So the faster you can figure that out, the better.
85% of millionaires have a smartphone. Did you know that fun fact, Terry?
I did not, but I do now. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome. Be strategic. Understand that there's a difference between a prospect and a donor. In higher ed, we also talk about suspects. So those are people that we know they went, like at NIU, we know you went to NIU, but that doesn't mean you have an affinity to become a donor.
Like Homer Simpson.
That's right.
He went to NIU.
He did, actually.
He is not a donor.
He is not a donor. We won't stop trying to engage him, though. So how do you treat so this is where we want to encourage you to think about your major donors and figure out what a major donor is for you.
Mm-hmm.
At the university, it's $25,000 or up is a major donor. We understand that for a lot of your organizations, maybe it's 250, maybe it's 1,000, but that's where you got to go back and look at your data and understand your data and just figure out what world you're living in there. Know your top 20 and then develop a plan and then really make it easy to give. You want to make a point here, Terry, about the easiness of making sure that people understand the way to make their gift?
Sure, yeah. Well, when you send a year-end appeal, give them a device to send it right back, send a check. I've had so many people throughout the years say, well, I got your letter, but you didn't send me a self-addressed envelope. So, everybody's different. Everyone responds differently, but make it really easy for them. Throw a stamp on there or make sure your online links work and they go where you want them to go. That's really important. But yeah, making it as easy as possible. And also just to go back on know your top 20 is so important. I think we all know who maybe some of our favorite donors. There's just some people you gravitate toward and you have a close relationship with them, but they might not be your top 20. So really go through the numbers, and doesn't mean you should stop talking to those people or lessen that. That's super important to have that relationship, but make sure you do know your top ones. And then if you don't know them well, then be intentional about that and building that relationship.
Fantastic.
So
go ahead. And I thought of another example. So you go ahead first and then I'll throw in something.
These are not earth-shattering or groundbreaking, but I want to encourage you to have some fun with this and think a little differently. Everybody gets a form letter or a receipt for your gift, hopefully, at the very least, but be creative to engage people, especially now. We're all in this weird world, and we're all living through the screens on our computers and really don't have a lot of contact with people when it's not like this. So maybe think of some different ways to engage donors that don't require a computer, or maybe they do, but maybe you never thought about it in some different ways. So one of the things is, if you're an organization, say you're a community gardens, and you have seedlings that you're planting, or maybe you're doing some herb plantings or flowers. Maybe it's cheesy, but pick your top 20 or people you want to get to know better and say, give them a seedling and, follow up with them and say, oh, I just wanted to check in and see how your plant's doing. Everyone's kind of taken up gardening if they haven't been already during this pandemic. So I've noticed there's a definite uptick in that, but it gives you an opportunity to call and check in and start building that relationship, even if it's for them to say, well, that thing died 2 weeks ago, but thank you. But then you can laugh and talk about, and start getting to know them differently.
Right.
They'll appreciate the check-in. And then also like a zoom in with the executive director and invite a certain group of donors, or maybe it's everyone, to just give an update on what things are looking like for your organization, or maybe some challenges you're facing. Try and keep it as positive as you can, but let them ask questions, and maybe you'll have some people that really do want to help in a different way. But engaging them in conversation is really key.
And I just thought of, with the holidays coming up, do where you can trace your hand and make the turkey. Do those. And if, maybe you're a child facing organization and you can get kids that you serve to do those, and decorate if some of you are in, I don't know the split between who's in the office and who's not, but make a little virtual Christmas tree, or a window with snowflakes, and there's a snowflake for every donor you have. But just be creative, and just know that the donors are going to appreciate whatever you do to say thanks.
Or kind of like at church, your Christmas tree idea is, the giving tree, and you take an ornament and you go and buy that item maybe for a family. Maybe you can do a virtual tree of some of the needs of your organization, where donors can go and pick an ornament, and their contribution could help you fulfill that need.
Awesome.
So doubling down on this it's something that we should all be doing, but I don't want you to feel like you have to do it. And that's the hard thing, right? Is taking the time, carving out time of your very busy schedules to be intentional and thoughtful about this. So when you do, have some fun with it and be creative. Think of some different things, brainstorm with your team. Everybody's got great ideas, and we're kind of looking for an outlet to be creative sometimes right now. So make it a fun process of even coming up with ideas that fit your mission, fit your organization, and will fit your donor base.
Right. So I had to remind myself what this organization does as we were looking, because I took it from my old presentation. But this is an organization that provides disaster relief. So one of the things that I love about the GiveGab platform for Give DeKalb County is that if you're using the full experience of that platform, it's focusing you on being donor-centered. So communicate the impact, be donor-centered and mission-driven. And at a time where, at the end of the day, you need general operating dollars, right? And so I encourage you to, I think I certainly had to learn this early in my career, right? I'm working for a nonprofit, and it is about their mission, right? So it's not about the fact that we need money to turn on the lights, right? Like, I remember working at the Museum of Science and Industry. It cost, and this was 20 years ago, $60,000 a day to open the doors of that world famous institution, right? So we're not going to call a donor and say, I need money because I need to turn on the lights. I need money to inspire the inventive genius in everyone. And when you make $100 gift, you help us open the doors of this awesome place to the world. So think about, I really encourage you to have a creative brainstorm on impact. If you're not doing this already, put that on your to-do list at the tip top. So when do you perform all these stewardship activities in your copious amounts of free time? At work. I want to talk about, this is all about communication. So just a reminder here, not to forget about your non-donors. And in this group is going to be your lapsed donors. So remember that 20% retention rate of new donors. If you haven't focused on them, you probably have a lot of lapsed people to go back and pick up. But remember also to move into your plan, your non-donors. So people that have come to your events but have never made a gift aside from a ticket purchase, that's not quite the same thing. So just remember that everybody that visits your website is a potential email subscriber, and then you can move them through this cultivation funnel into becoming a donor and a repeat donor, because remember, it costs less to retain a donor than it does to acquire one. And then I want you to all think of marketing as cultivation, and then cultivation is is pre-stewardship, right? Going back to that great slide that Terry shared. Moving on here. Develop a plan that works for you. So remember, here is your segmentation. Think about the way, so we've talked about the ways in which you communicate. Now think about where these donors fit in your organization. Bigger gifts, more personal contact, annual donors. We kind of focused on these two segments here. So Terry, you want to throw anything else in here on this slide?
I think though, honing in on a plan that works for you. So you can make these as complex or as user-friendly as possible. With all of our constraints on us, make it easy on yourself, but again, try and make it fun. And so I think the next tool is that we want to share with you is a communication calendar. And again, you'll have the deck, but you can build your own, right?
We do have this as a handout.
Yeah.
You, which I don't think I sent to you, Ben, before, but I will do so right after.
So think of the events that you have in your organization already and plop those in first. I mean, do you do an annual fundraiser in April, or is it Give DeKalb County in May? Make sure you hone in on those and then build up to those and build around them. And not just up to, but the aftermath, the after stewardship of your success during Give DeKalb County. How do you want to make that look different this year?
Right.
Because you've raised the most money that you ever have. No pressure.
Right.
No.
You all did amazing.
Yeah. And then your year-end appeals. So really just having a visual and then brainstorm around this. This can be part of the focus of your brainstorming with your team.
Just of note here, this is just my not being good with PowerPoint. There's nothing special about those bolded months. That's just the slide content, the way that it made it look. So you got to figure out for you. I mean, I will say that June, July, and August, typically, I mean, I even found this over the summer with the pandemic. I think there was serious pandemic. Like, I'm just tired of all the everything. So it is, typically make those your easier times to send out a quick newsletter, send out a quick email update. But people, even in the midst of COVID, tried to kind of unplug in the summer. So.
And just a reminder, as you're talking about this, it may be a letter to you, but to that donor, I really want you to think about it as it's personal to them. They gave you their money that they worked for. And they gave it to your organization because they trust you and love what you do and how you inspire and help others. So really do try and make it evoke emotion as best as you can. Not every letter is going to bring someone to tears, but when you have an opportunity to really, steward maybe one of your major donors, or maybe it's a first time gift from somebody that doesn't have much, make it feel special to them. And the more you know your donors, the easier that can be. But it is personal. So try and make it the best experience possible.
I love this slide. It's my favorite one.
Who doesn't love a little kid?
That's right. And if you could throw a little kid with a dog in there, you're going to raise a ton of money.
So
yeah, go ahead, Terry.
Oh, I was just going to say, as we kind of get to our last few slides here, these are actually more of just some takeaways and some reminders, because there's a lot on these. But we wanted to include them because we thought it was important. So these are just a couple of reminders of why donors keep giving, right? Kristen, do you want to jump into this, or do you?
I was just going to say that asterisk is just giving credit to taking this information from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project link that's in the resources at the back of the deck here. So.
Excellent. So we'll let you review those as your team and your staff, just because I know we're running a little close to time. And then some strategies to increase donor retention. Again, reporting on your outcomes, thanking people quickly, sharing impact. So these are a lot of the things that we've talked about throughout this presentation, but just wanted to reinforce and leave you with, when you're wondering, why are we sitting around the table and why are we doing this? these are some of the reminders for you and where you can hone in.
Great.
And then as we round it out here, we just have a couple of ideas and resources for you to connect with, to maybe inspire some more thought and some creative juices flowing, but all in all, really to find the best ways for your organization to show impact so you can retain and increase those donors that you have. Kristen, do you have anything else you want to add before we go to questions?
I don't. I think ready for some Q&A.
Great. Well, thank you both. There's some excellent new content in there and some great reminders of maybe things that you know, we all should be doing. So thank you for that. I've had a number of questions that have come in. A couple of these are very interesting, so buckle up.
Okay.
The first one is, what ideas do you have for non-ask events? It's hard to prioritize these given the limited time that we have, but it's nice to connect with donors and not always ask for money.
Yep. Something connected to your mission. Ben, throw out, well, could you share the organization that asked that question, and we can give kind of some brainstorm here?
Well, these came in directly to me, so I'm not, they may want to be anonymous.
Okay. I'm going to pick on, well, I'm on the board of Pay It Forward Health, so I'll just use that as an, okay. So something like a house tour. When you make a gift to Pay It Forward House, you're helping provide a restful night's sleep for family members with loved ones who are receiving medical care in DeKalb County. So a lot of our donors have possibly never been to the house. So we could do a house tour and say, when a guest comes in, we could make it simple. We could pre-record it and then make it, you know, a quick check-in with the executive director. We've been doing a lot of these at NIU where it's just an opportunity to connect with the mission of the university and get an update. So if you haven't been doing those, I think that's kind of what Terry was talking about with the Zoom ins as a good, yeah. But I have to tell you, I'm not a fan of, we could do a whole session on this too, Ben. Anybody who's been to any presentation I've ever done, I am not a philanthropic partner that loves fundraising events. They're a necessary evil. They're really expensive. So I'm a big proponent of events just being cultivation opportunities. And now's time to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. I think when you, yeah, some of the fundraising events are necessary, but yeah, people just want to connect with other people. So I love the idea of the house tour. Also, you know, showcasing or having one of the recipients or somebody that was affected by philanthropy to your organization personally speak. Or if they're not comfortable with that, just sharing that story. So it connects you with the people that you serve, but also it just creates a stronger connection between that person and your mission to your donor in a real way. So really telling the stories, but then if you're going to do an event that's not a fundraiser, have a follow-up plan. How are you going to follow up with the people that attended? And ask questions. It could be a phone call and just saying, hey, it was great to see you at the event. I'm so glad you could come. We appreciate your support. What did you think? Or if we did something like that again, what could we do better?
Yeah.
Great.
Think outside the box too. You know, we said this earlier, but maybe I'm, well, again, use Pay It Forward House again. We don't have anything to do other than feeding people cookies. We have some cookie drop-off, amazing cookies. They always bring them to board meetings and I never can resist, but we can't bake cookies right now. So, or we can't give you cookies when you come by the house right now. So we actually thought it'd be fun to do a little cooking segment or just something. It's about the connection. And like Terry said, it's about having fun. And we're all about, I think we're going to be spending a lot more time doing virtual cocktail parties with friends, clearly, than sitting in backyards, although the weather's amazing this week. So
take advantage of it while you can, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next question. One way we've tried to bring donors into our organization and make them feel like they're a part of our mission is by asking them what they think about our different programs, ideas, new initiatives. but this can backfire. And it may set the expectation that we're going to do whatever they've shared with us. Do you have any thoughts about this?
I would be very clear. Well, if you ask the question, you have to be prepared for a variety of answers, especially ones you don't want to hear. However, I think, if you're asking a question, you have to be open to the feedback, good, bad, or ugly. But making sure you say to the person, I appreciate your feedback. That's good for us to understand and to know, but it doesn't mean you're going to turn your organization upside down. So you need to find a tactful way to manage expectations as a result of the conversation. So you might not have the power to change the world and implement all the great suggestions that they have, but it's good for you to understand and know the thoughts of your donors.
Terry, remember that sign as you walked into the advancement suite?
Oh yeah.
Locale, that if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money.
Yep.
So it could be a good hook, but like Terry said, figure out maybe, now you're being reactive, but turn it around to be proactive and say, we heard what you said, and this is how we can apply it, right?
Mm-hmm. But that's part of the dance of it all is you can't anticipate what people are going to say to you, and you can't overpromise what you can do. It's really listening at that point.
Yeah, and I think in the big picture, that's a good tactic to use, right? To invite that type of feedback and to have those conversations with some donors. But great point, Terry, about having, needing to be prepared for, what you're going to hear. I think this next one is really maybe two questions, but it says, we had a lot of new donors through Give to DeKalb County, and I'm wondering the best way you think we can build those relationships other than emails, Zoom, phone calls, or handwritten notes. So they've taken some things off the table that you've talked about. So maybe thinking beyond those. And then the next part is, should we solicit them for year-end donations and Give to DeKalb County next year?
Yes. Absolutely. Don't discount yourself from an annual ask just because they gave through Give to DeKalb County. If the answer again is no to that, that's okay. Hopefully they'll come back again in May, and then maybe they've done their giving for the year during that time. So that's okay. But you don't know unless you ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And jump into this Bloomerang report that is a high-level synopsis of the fundraising effectiveness project, because it talks about those people that give to you twice a year. Those are the best prospects for you to move up the ladder. So again, going back to your data, make sure you know that. And as far as have a creative brainstorm, to go back to the first part of that question, I just made up that idea about ornaments and snowflakes, and I'm kind of creative, but I'm sure if you did, what kind of a fun thing to engage your board with, say, hey, anybody that has time next Thursday at 7:00, hit this Zoom link for 30 minutes. Our only point is creative brainstorming on new donor retention. At NIU, we have a ton of resources, right? We always need more, but so we have this whole rollout. You get a packet, but it's my point of telling you this is that it doesn't really matter how big or small you are. You can still have a pointed stewardship plan for those new donors, right? So if you've done all those things, brainstorm on what's your seedling or what's your snowflake, and figure that out and connect it back to your mission.
And is it through a different medium? Is it through a short video? Maybe it's TikTok. I don't know. But depending on who your donor base is and how you want to connect with them. But maybe it is a short, just a video things. And you could push it out to them, but it can also be on your website. So if they're not interested in the forward motion from your organization, if they're a donor to you, they're likely going to check your website, and maybe they'll check it out on their own.
Okay, we have a couple more questions to get to, so I want to move on to those. This is an easy one. Do you have any examples of the impact overview that you referenced?
Say that end of that again.
The impact.
You referenced in the presentation an impact overview as something you could send to donors. Do you have any examples of that could be shared?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll find one and throw it to you for follow-up.
Yeah.
But think about visual communication. I think, and Terry, give your opinion here, but I like the one pager. I feel like, was it the History Center or Tales or somebody else recently that did a good infographics, quick hits, 6th grade level information.
Yeah, so we might be able to find some examples of that, and we'll try to provide that in the email follow-up if we're able to put a finger on those. Next question. This is a little off topic, but I'm newer to fundraising, and I feel like I'm failing a little bit because I really don't like asking people for money. What are some strategies for getting over that anxiety?
Practice on a friend. I personally, so I've been asking for money for a really long time, and I don't really like it either sometimes, right? So what I found is I hate role playing, but it is a necessary evil. So I would recommend that you try it and work some of the bugs out with somebody who's not going to judge you. Give them a cocktail and let them listen to you, just so you can get the words out, and then it will get easier. Then secondly, I am a firm believer of the cultivation and stewardship process. The better you can build a relationship and the stronger relationship with a donor, the less of an ask it actually has to be. If you're doing a cold ask, that's pretty uncomfortable for you and the donor. If you have a relationship where you kind of know what they're interested in, you kind of know what their capacity is, it's really then about having a conversation saying, Ben, we are really looking forward to this expansion of our building, but here are a couple of key things that we need to do first before we can move forward with that. I thought, from judging what we've talked about, that seems like it would be in alignment with something you might be interested in. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think? Would you help us with that? Mm-hmm. And it could just be through conversation that an ask kind of pops out. So it doesn't have to be like the heart pounding, sweating across the table ask. It can be really natural. So the better you know your donor base, I think the easier it is.
Agreed. And then go back to that slide about impact. And if I say to you, Terry, did you know if you make a gift of $500, you'll provide a restful night's sleep for 500 people? Now I use mission-driven connection. Or did you know that $500 provides a chainsaw kit for a Sawyer team? I have no idea what that is. But when you're a disaster relief organization, if you're trying to cut somebody out of an earthquake area, that's super important. So when I agree wholeheartedly with everything Terry said. And, when I was early in my career, I would literally stand in front of the mirror over and over. And it's just one line. It's only one moment in time. But if you can connect it and say, hey, Ben, did you know $500 does this? You did the ask, but you connected it back to the mission. And it doesn't feel so much like an ask when you do that.
And I'm having flashbacks to when we actually did role play this at an in-person training at the depot. We've got some great photos from that.
You guys were such good sports.
I didn't know it was happening. I didn't know my lines. I was ready on that one.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for this. We're coming up on our time now. We really appreciate this. Such valuable content, and we really appreciate you presenting today. And to everyone in the audience, thank you for joining us. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending a follow-up evaluation where you can give us some feedback. We'll include the slide deck in this recording as well, along with any other resources that we're able to share out. So in closing, we encourage you to visit dcmp.org, follow us on Facebook for different trainings and opportunities, or to sign up for our newsletter. Our next webinar is on November 18th, and it's on sexual harassment in the workplace. And we've almost reached our max capacity for that webinar. We do have a few spots left, but for those of you who have not yet satisfied the new state law requiring this training annually, we encourage you to check it out. And frankly, it's great content to hear any time of the year. So we hope that you'll join us for that session. It's presented by Linnea Laskowski from Safe Passage. You can learn more about that on our website and register for it today. So once again, thank you for attending, and a big thank you goes to our friends Kristen and Terry for sharing their time and expertise with all of us today. Thank you again, and take care.